That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house made me jump and Max was restless, pacing around the living room. Around 2 a.m, just as I was to start dozing off, I heard it. Max, what's up, boy?
After about 5 minutes, I wondered why he hadn't said anything.
No, I don't like this.
So I turned around to look at him, only to see a little girl.
Ah! Not only is that scary, it's fucking annoying. You want to just go, fuck off, mate.
Yeah, fucking like kick her.
Kick her in the face.
Kick her in the
face. Kick her in the face!
I've just soiled my pants. Where's my au pair to clean me? Wipe my bum? Welcome to episode 82
of Ghost Huns. Huns.
82, that's, you know what, we've come so far, Hannah.
82 weeks.
82 fucking episodes.
What's that, like a year and a half? Just over.
In dog years, we've got 5 dogs.
In dog years,
I'm a bit hungover today,
old.
so Hannah got me drunk. On you.
So you did a very good job in doing it yourself. Actually,
do you know
I didn't feel that drunk.
One regret I have is that I didn't have that Basque cheesecake.
Why didn't you have that? You're full of promise, always, and you never follow through.
What do they call that?
I'm going to have
fur coat and no knickers.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and you're going to have. I'm going to have a Basque cheesecake.
No,
I'm going to have a sangria.
Do you know what? It's because we were having the drinks and I forgot.
Oh my God, the biggest crow in the world came and took our croqueta.
It did.
But thank God, because it was fucking gross.
Little bitches. I hate crows. You've heard it here now.
No, I don't mind them.
I hate them. They're bullies.
Oh, they're just part of the food chat. Oh, you're talking about your traumatising.
Yeah, they eat young birds. Okay. So how are you? Are you well? You're not hungover.
Thank you. No, I feel all right. I'm very tired. But I mean, like, I'm always quite tired.
I'd love a wild swim right now. You know, like a...
What, in the lake?
Like a lovely babbling brook.
Yeah, that would be nice,
and
actually.
And I just flow through it.
With the sun dappling through the trees.
And I'm just having a little doggy paddle as I go.
And a lovely lunch.
Yeah. Caesar Sally.
I'd fucking want a Caesar salad.
Caesar salad.
I was wondering this morning whether or not I could go and get one of those salads from that salad bar you keep talking about. But it's too late.
You have to go there at some point. Well, we'll go.
You keep telling me this, and we'd never go.
Well, when do you want to go? Let's put a date in.
Now.
No, we've got a podcast to record.
See? You're always putting up barriers.
No knickers. I am. Very fair.
Yes, how are you? Like we haven't just spent the past 4 hours together.
I'm well. I'm very well. I've got a gig I am unsure I want to do tonight, and...
Cancel it. Fucking cancel it. Well, you're going to go back home now to Ealing, and then you're going to go back out.
I know.
Cancel it, mate.
It's bad, isn't it?
Cancel it.
Well,
go home, read a book, get your trackies on.
Oh, God,
Lounge. Have a lovely cup of tea.
The book that I'm on now is David Nichols's new one.
What's that?
He's the one who wrote One Day. I'm sure we've spoken about this, and I'm going to tell you what it's like.
Oh, what, the One Day, the romantic comedy?
Yeah. The one you
really
watched on Netflix.
Oh, that's great on a hangover. Romantic drama. Go home. Put your tracksuit bottoms on. Get a nice hoodie on. Take your bra off. Get into bed.
Yeah.
What were you doing? Were you checking if you had a bra on?
Yeah, well, I was wondering which one it is.
Oh, are you able to walk around without a bra on sometimes?
No.
So I'd be so jealous.
No, I don't do that.
You know, to those people that are like, I don't even know if I've got one on.
No, that's not...
Right.
Yeah.
Go fuck yourself, bitches! I carry around these melons on a daily basis. And it's always digging in. No, go home. Get comfy as shit. Put your fluffy socks on.
Yeah, but I've got to try some new material.
No, you haven't.
But then I have to because it's my
Didn't you try some new material the other day?
Yeah, I'm going to try it again.
You're going to do some more?
Well, I have to, don't I? See if it works.
Yeah, but like, just have a little break.
I know, but
actually, I do need some new material gigs as well. Anyway.
Okay, well, other than that,
we're doing phenomenally
thriving.
well.
We had a lovely day in Richmond yesterday. We put the world to rights.
Oh, we did. I think everyone hated us in that beer garden.
Yeah.
There was a couple that were just listening to our ADHD.
Yeah.
Just
screeching at each other.
Yeah.
Just screeching words at each other.
Yeah.
If you want to know what mine and Hannah's friendship is like, it's much like the pod where we just go blah, 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 blah.
It's like the pod, and it's also it's incredibly like Huns After Dark and
Oh, good plug.
Agony Huns, which you can find on patreon.com/ghost-huns. And actually, there's a bit of goss over there.
Oh, so much goss.
There's some proper goss. So go over.
Why do I
Check
look
it
like
out.
Rod Stewart today? What is that?
You're hungover. Your hair. I find my hair when I'm hungover just gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, it's like a Japanese knotweed.
Yeah,
Bloody hell.
it is quite luggy.
Yeah, it's like Medusa's snakes, isn't
Yes,
it?
yeah.
They're coming to get there.
But it's fine.
Anyway, why don't you pick a tarot to set what
yes,
the
please.
theme is
I'd
for
love
this
to.
episode, please? I do apologise, I'm not well.
I'm taking this really serious. Oh.
The book being ordered.
I don't think we've ever had this before.
What on earth?
It's the Ace of Wands.
Oh my God, I've actually never seen that in my life.
No, me neither. I'm going to
like
Google it.
That's one big carrot.
Shall we Google it? Because that is horrible, that book.
Ooh, it symbolises a pivotal act. Hannah, this is from the goss from yesterday. A pivotal act or a fateful step that will let loose a chain of events leading towards your desired goal. It refers to a birth or a new beginning, the inauguration of an endeavour, and the building of a necessary commitment to see a project or plan through. It personifies an aroused will that is totally focused.
And it does look
aiming
like a penis. But what I have to say,
you heard nothing there because my mouth was wide open.
What I have to say, in
shock.
all honesty, is that I initially picked it up very much reversed.
Oh, did you? What does it say for that?
Emerging idea, lack of direction, distractions and delays.
It's
In the Ace of Wands, a hand holding a sprouting hand extends from a cloud as if to offer a new opportunity or idea with the potential to grow. Oh, the rich, verdant landscape is further confirmation of this growth capability. In the distance on the left sits a castle representing the promise of opportunities to come, and hills and mountains line the horizon. Their rolling peaks remind us that there will always be challenges along the way, but they are surmountable with enough effort.
Oh my
So
God.
basically, we just have to keep working hard.
I love that. It says the reverse here suggests that you should be resisting change, which can seem to frighten you.
Right.
Nevertheless, it's to your ultimate advantage not to balk, even though the situation may seem risky.
Right, so we have to just stay steadfast.
Yeah.
Keep doing what we're doing. I love that. And that's exactly what we needed today.
Yeah, that's really exciting.
Oh, I'm
I
thrilled.
love that. Maybe put it in the
What's that
middle
mean?
there.
Okay, do you want to stir it?
Yeah, go on then.
Boom. Okay, I've got some here.
Wow.
When I was 12 years old, I had a best friend named Brenda. Didn't we all?
She was the dinner lady.
Nobody else would talk to me, so I had to go for a 52-year-old divorcee. After school, we always went to her house to hang out. That's a bit weird now. She lived in a big house on the edge of town. One day, I'm so sorry. Excuse me. One day, Brenda didn't show up for school. She was absent for the next few days, and I began wondering if there was something wrong with her. After she had missed a whole week of school, I decided to pay her a visit. I cycled all the way across town and arrived at her house just as it was getting dark outside. When I rang the doorbell, I got a shock when the door opened almost immediately. Brenda's mother was standing in the doorway, but there was something very strange about her. Her eyes seemed darker than usual and her hair was hanging loose around her shoulders. I noticed that she was wearing a bathrobe. The most unsettling thing was the way that she was grinning at me.
Is this Brenda or Brenda's mum? Right.
She didn't say a word, she just stood there staring at me with an evil smile playing across her lips. Is Brenda here? I asked nervously. She beckoned at me to come in, and before I could say anything, she'd slipped back into the darkened house. As I stepped inside, my eyes strained to see in the darkness, but I wasn't sure where she'd gone. But just then, I heard a strange humming sound. Just in case no one knows what humming is. I followed it into the kitchen. I found her there, standing at the kitchen sink with her back towards me. The moment I entered the kitchen, she stopped humming and there was an eerie silence. I took a seat at the kitchen table and waited. She seemed to be taking forever. I spent the next 5 minutes just sitting there wondering what was going on, and then I realised something very odd. The whole time I'd been sitting there, she hadn't moved a muscle. Her back was still towards me and I couldn't see her face. Her hands hung limply by her sides and her head was tilted slightly. Something was very wrong. I stood up nervously and approached her. She remained completely still. Ever so slowly I moved around her and tried to get a look at her face to see if she was all right. The sight still haunts me to this very day. Her eyes were wide open and she still had that evil grin on her face. I was so freaked out that I couldn't bear to stay in the kitchen a moment longer. Without saying a word, I backed out of the room and made my way towards the front door. I jumped on my bike and began cycling as fast as I could down the long, winding driveway and all the way across town. I didn't stop until I reached the safety of my own house. It wasn't until a few days later that I found out why my friend Brenda had been absent from school. My parents told me that there'd been a tragic death in Brenda's family. Who died? I asked. My parents broke the sad news to me and it made my hair stand on end. I was crying from fright. Brenda's mother had died suddenly. The night I was called over to her house, Brenda had been at her grandparents' place attending the funeral. Years later, when I was 16, you look confused. So the night she met Brenda's mum.
Yeah. No, I get it. I do get it.
Okay,
I'm just a bit slow today. I'm just processing.
Okay, so we just need to give you...
Fuck.
What?
Jesus.
Hello?
What's happening?
Rosie Jones just stripped her clothes off. Whoom. Okay. That really ruined the...
Yeah, we'll get back in.
Okay. Brenda's mother had died suddenly, and the night I called over to her house, Brenda had been at her grandparents' place attending the funeral. Years later, when I was 16, I made a little extra money by working as a babysitter on weekends. On weekend? One evening, a friend of mine called me and said she knew a family who desperately needed a babysitter. She was busy and wanted to know if I was interested in babysitting for them instead. She told me the parents were really nice, the pay was good, and their 3-year-old daughter was polite and well behaved. I wasn't doing anything important, so I told her I'd be really glad to take the job. That evening, I went to the family's house and met the mother. Her name was Ruth, and she was getting ready to go out for the night with friends. She mentioned that her husband was out of town on business and gave me some numbers to call if I needed to get in touch with her. The night was really easy. I made dinner for the little girl, gave her a bubble bath, and then I got her dressed for bed. It was around midnight when I heard the front door open and footsteps coming down the hallway. I thought it was strange because I hadn't even heard a car pull up. Turning round, I was relieved to see Ruth making her way into the living room where I was sitting watching TV. She never said a word to me, and as she walked past me, I was surprised by how different she looked. Something about her eyes had changed, and she was grinning from ear to ear. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. I knew that evil grin. I'd seen it before, many, many years ago. Ruth sat at the dining table with her back turned towards me. Her hands hung limp by her sides and her head was cocked to the left. She was humming to herself. "Ruth?" I asked nervously. "Ruth, are you okay?" No answer. "Ruth, you're not alive anymore, are you?" Silence. With shaking hands, I quickly gathered my things and backed out of the room. When I got to the hallway, I opened the front door and I looked outside. There was no car in the driveway. All of a sudden, the eerie silence was broken by the sound of the phone ringing. I didn't want to answer it. I was afraid of what I might hear. For a moment, my hand seemed to hover over the phone. Then I lifted the receiver and put it to my ear. I already knew who it was. It was the police calling to tell me that Ruth had been involved in a car accident an hour ago. She'd been killed on impact. Tears were streaming down my face as I ran upstairs, grabbed Ruth's daughter from her bed and bundled her up in the blanket. As I came back downstairs, I had to pass by the door to the living room. I could still see Ruth sitting at the table with her back to me. Without pausing for a second, I ran out into the night carrying the little girl in my arms.
Oh my God.
Spooky!
Dead spooky!
I hate that like...
And the back turned as well, because it just feels like at any moment
like
they
that
could
man.
snap.
Like that, the tweed man.
Oh, fucking grim. Liked it though.
Did you enjoy that? Did you?
Yeah, especially when it
spooky.
When it goes, "Ruth, you're not alive, are you?"
Ruth, you're not alive anymore.
You're not alive anymore.
I'd love to play a ghost.
A part of me's like, what? Why is Ruth doing that?
Yeah.
You know? Don't scare the babysitter.
Don't scare. I think it's their souls. They have no choice.
Oh, I see. You're just sort of damned to
Damned.
the...
Damned.
Would you like one from me?
Yes, please, girl.
Oh, I quite like this one. It's Grizzly.
Oh, I love a Grizzly one.
My little sister isn't a missing person anymore because something else came home in her place.
Oh, I've read this one.
I know I should have been ecstatic. My mother's eyes swam with gratitude, and yet mine were always cast to the ground, burning holes into crayon-ridden patches of carpet we refused to clean. We barely dared to dream during those silent dinners without Willow. The jarring sound of cutlery echoing through our now too empty house. Conversations seeming pointless without her. Skipping around the dinner table, begging for attention I gave her too little of. Thumbs ghosting over my phone instead. I want to reach back in time and wrench my head from my shoulders when I think of her begging to show me a cartwheel and watching myself roll my eyes instead of grabbing her up and memorising her face because she would be dead soon. Days of torture turned to weeks and Willow was gone, lost to some place only our terrible imaginations could conjure up. She was dead, but we were ghosts, haunting our own house with pale apparitions of ourselves, eating to live and speaking only to fill the
That made me
silence.
jump.
Speaking only to fill the silence. She was colour and the world redrew itself in black and white for the three of us. Life was over. Until it wasn't. The news she was missing had never really caught on outside the walls of our little town. So when the local policeman came to our doorstep, it was without fanfare. On the very first day she vanished, the officer leading the investigation found a small pair of gloves. Her gloves, by the treacherous river that wound through the woods. To them, the investigation was over before it even began. No need to alert the press or sully the town with sad posters. The world chugged along without us, utterly unbothered, and we crumbled into 1,000 pieces. But as the rain-soaked policeman uttered on a Tuesday evening, Willow had returned, found in a patch of woods, smeared with mud and blood, and asking to come back to our home. She led the police to this house, and as everyone yelled in unison, "She's back!" It's what my parents choked out in desperate, relieved sobs I've never heard fill our house up before. It's what all the paperwork stated, endless days of making sure everything was above board. It seemed I was the only naysayer staring into this girl's eyes and knowing with every fibre of my being that this was not my Willow sitting cross-legged on our family sofa. She looked like her, eerily so, but it was off. It was wrong. Her chin was a little too pointy, her gaze a little too cold. She was not my bright, bubbly little sister dressed head to toe in pink. But she said she was. She said it with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes which sparkled just a shade or two off Willow's. Her voice was a semitone lower, but that's because it's been 2 years and voices change, my mother insisted. Her chin-length hair now flowed far past her shoulders in that same chocolate hue, a length Willow would gasp at if she saw. This stranger wandered straight into our house, pulled on my sister's too small clothes and played pretend, pulling the strings on everyone but me. The first night was something out of a horror movie. The first night was something out of a horror movie. The heaviest sense of dread settling like lead in my stomach. Bile rose into my throat as she skipped into the living room, settling herself in Willow's seat and tugging impatiently at the hem of my sister's favourite dress. I bought it for her on a spontaneous shopping trip, watching her eyes light up at the little sunflowers lining the collar. She'd been giddy, and now a stranger's fingernails dug into the fabric, leaving marks I'd never get rid of. No longer would that little dress smell like Willow, because it was going to smell like her. "Come to the table," my mother insisted in a too jovial tone, eyes more alight than I'd seen them in years. My father nodded a silent agreement, perhaps a bit more muted than she was, and I had to swallow down my fury, my confusion. I had to. 6 eyes bore into mine and the chair scraped as I sat down. And this wasn't my sister. She stared over her plate at me with a hollow smile, eyes devoid of any real emotion. Her fingers drummed on the mahogany, a disjointed rhythm I'd never heard despite sitting across from my sister for 9 years. "I missed you." Her words were sickly sweet, head tilted slightly to the side. Her gaze felt almost challenging, but my mother's eyes brimmed with tears as she nodded vigorously, fork hanging in midair. Oh gosh, you wouldn't believe. She gulped her words down, overwhelmed. You've dreamt of a family dinner, haven't you, love? She regarded me almost desperately, fingers trembling. And I had, of course. I'd cried 1,000 tears for my baby sister, but the girl, swinging her legs inches from mine, sitting in my sister's clothes, was not the girl I sobbed for. When her foot brushed mine accidentally, thousands of goosebumps erupted over my skin because it was wrong. I'd love to hear where you've been, I dared whisper into the silence. My mother gasped, fork clattering noisily onto her plate. Mr. Matthews said, yeah, and if Willow ever turns up, I'll keep quiet about it, I snapped, eyeing this wild animal before me. She sucked in a mighty breath, and I swore I felt her gaze prickle me. But it was only seconds before her eyes became doe-like, wide and comical. I don't want to talk about it, she uttered sadly, looking to my mother for reassurance. Her lip quivered, hands shook. It was almost laughable how overzealous her performance was. And yet my father admonished me, snapping at me to leave while my mother gathered up the intruder in her arms, clutching at her so she'd never leave. I watched the family before me, new and being invented before my eyes. As I left, she smirked right at me. Nobody believed me. Not on the second day when I walked in and saw her doing perfect cartwheels in the living room, something Willow had been utterly hopeless at. She must have learnt, my mother chirped, scrubbing dishes so vigorously I swore she was leaving cracks. Nobody blinked on the third day when she locked herself in the bathroom and claimed to be too sick to head to the station to kickstart the rigorous medical testing. But it was the fourth night that haunted my dreams, driving me ever closer to the edge I'd been dancing along. I'd largely managed to avoid her, other than the odd lingering gaze as we crossed paths in the hallway or a wry smile as we brushed shoulders, until there she was, at 2 a.m, standing over me as I slept. I didn't scream, didn't startle her into dropping her soulless smile as she gazed upon me, staring down mere inches from my face, so close I could feel her hot breath on my nose, feel the animosity coming off her in waves. She didn't move when I clocked her. She didn't take a step back or pretend to be doing anything other than pressing her face into mine in the dead of night.
Oh, she sounds like a right little twat.
I know. What I don't want to say C-word.
It's not. Just doesn't feel like the day.
No, it's not the day for it, but she is
when you're
one.
hungover.
Yeah.
She is a massive clock.
Clock. Why are you here? I whispered, and we both knew I meant more than standing in my room. She laughed, a little giggle I'd never heard leave Willow's mouth.
Oh. Not only is that scary, it's fucking annoying. You want to just go, fuck off,
Yeah,
mate.
fucking like kick
her in the face.
Kick her in the
face. Kick her in the face.
Yeah. I wanted to come home, silly. She hissed back, breath tickling my cheek horribly. I swallowed, desperate not to show the fear which was beginning to course through me. You aren't Willow. I gritted my teeth, and only then did she pull back a little, mock hurt lining her features. That's a shame, she frowned. You're my favourite big sister. My hands trembled under the covers. And how many sisters have you had? She paused, a slow smile spreading across her face. Oh. Lots. Oh. I don't think I've ever felt as unsafe in my life as I did in that moment, watching her eyes glimmer with something truly evil, a sick sort of pride. I didn't find my voice for a long time, but when I did, it was small and timid, a shadow of my confidence from only hours earlier. What do you want with us? She thought on it for a moment, tilting her head back and forth as though the question was funny. Even in the dark, she looked wrong, as though someone had built her to look like my beloved Willow and misremembered her slightly, getting the angles and details wrong. She lay her fingers on my forehead, painfully drumming that same pattern on my skin as all those days ago. Shamefully, I was too scared to move, even as her fingers jammed into my skull. I like your mum, she mused, giggling childishly as she caught her mistake. Ah, Mum. I think she's going to like me more than your sister. But before I could react, she was gone, skipping towards the door in the wrong nightclothes, only turning back to casually ruin my life. She's like the doll, Megan.
Yeah, do you know, I hated that film. I thought I was going to really enjoy it. I started really enjoying it, and then it got too insane, and I was like, ugh.
I enjoyed how batshit it was.
It was mental.
She's dead, by the way, she murmured into the silence, shrugging.
Who?
It was painful too.
Oh, the actual willow. Oh, sad.
It was painful too. Sorry for your loss.
Oh, God.
And she left, leaving me aghast as I festered in my blanket, desperately grabbing Willow's teddy bear from beside my bed and clutching it to my chest. I sobbed myself to sleep that night, face buried in her favourite toy and knowing for sure that she was never coming home. It only got worse. One day, I came home and my father wouldn't speak, only managing to stare at his new daughter as she smirked at him from the shadow of Willow's bedroom. He startled at me in the hallway, scurrying back to his study. When I called for him, he shook his head. "Hang out with your friends, go back outside," he'd ordered, voice cracking. He slammed the door behind him and that was that. I was left to stare into Willow's room, locking gazes with a pair of empty eyes sneering at me from under the bed, dark shadows only giving me a glimpse at her little limbs all cracked at the wrong angles as she twisted herself to fit where she shouldn't.
Oh.
When I tried to speak to my mother, she grew more and more irate, once physically covering my mouth with her hand. "Mum, please, you have to see she isn't who she..." But she muffled my words out of existence with a trembling hand, sending me a subtle no with a quick shake of the head. She pleaded towards me with her eyes, but I realised quickly that her steely gaze had fallen behind me. I didn't need to see the parasite in my peripheral to feel her gaze burning holes into the back of my head, and I wasn't imagining it. My mother was fearful, finally turning back to me with steely resolve. "Everything is fine," she murmured, speaking 1,000 words with only her eyes and voice dropping to a whisper. "We will make it work."
I think she just doesn't want to. She just doesn't want
she wants
to
her
deal
daughter
with it.
back. That night, the stranger wearing my sister's favourite bracelet gleefully pushed a piece of paper to the centre of the dinner table, eyes lit up with glee. "I drew it!" No. "I drew us!" she cried, greedily watching for our reactions. My mother gave nothing away, only visibly swallowing as she drank in the paper, white-knuckled grip on her spoon. My father stood from his seat, striding from the table and slamming the front door behind him as he left us, perhaps for the last time. I, however, dared pick it up, regarding every horrific line and frantic scratching before me. It was us, except the people labelled Mummy and Daddy were standing without heads, rivers of blood dripping down their torn torsos. My double sat in the corner of the paper, a pair of gouged-out eyes lying on the floor next to my terrified frame. Our stranger stood smiling with a large rake in her hand, head bent to the side and wearing my sister's dress. But somehow worst of all was the picture of a little girl, crumpled in the corner, a frown etched upon her face. Willow, the scrawl above her stated. I could hardly bear it. I don't remember much of it now. Just the screaming and crying, lifting whatever wasn't nailed down and hurling it across the room, watching it splinter into 1,000 pieces. My mother cradling me as she dragged me upstairs, letting me bawl into her familiar sweet-smelling cardigan, clutching her as though she'd leave me too. The swirling wrongness engulfed our house, swallowing us back into the clutches of grief, but my all-encompassing comfort disappeared because when that horrible little thing downstairs called a desperate "Mummy!" my mother went rigid. "You don't have to go," I pleaded through bleary eyes, but her sad smile told me that she did. "I prayed 2 years for my baby girl to come home," she said in a thick voice, clutching my hands as if begging me to understand. I'll always wish I tried harder to keep her in that room with me, because the moment I loosened my grasp, I sealed her fate. The thing downstairs called, and she offered me a sad smile, fingers brushing mine before she disappeared through the darkness of the door. I never saw her again. Before my eyes closed and sleep claimed me, I saw the head of Willow's beloved bear, discarded on the floor across the room 3 feet from its body. My heart sank into my stomach and I drifted off into nightmares, feeling somehow it was all over. When I awoke, slick with sweat and dread, she was there, in the darkest corner of my room. Almost Willow. Nighttime shrouded her, but I could see the blood even in the dim light. Something glinted in her hand under the glow of moonlight and her eyes blazed with something bigger than the both of us. 12 minutes passed and she didn't move. Her relentless, empty stare locked onto me as she swayed back and forth. I knew that the second I moved, she was going to lunge. Somehow I knew that's what Mum did. That's why the room fell into such an uneasy silence, because I was utterly alone, and when I held my breath, I swore I could hear the shift of fabric. Yes, she was definitely closer to me than she had been 5 seconds ago. If I squinted, I could see her feet shuffling towards me, in time with my erratic breathing. I ran, of course, limbs jelly as I sprinted past my parents' room, practically choking on the stench of blood. She locked all the doors, sealed all the windows. I don't even remember how I made it to the hospital, sodden and picking glass out of my skin as a kind nurse led me to a room, concern etched into her features as she promised to return for me as soon as she called the police. It's hard to type, with blood trickling down my phone, fragments of the upstairs window jammed into my flesh. It's over, I'm sure. But somehow, with every second that passes, I feel closer to my sister, the real one, not the one with her face pressed into the third-story window of my hospital room, face contorted in bloody, evil glee.
Oh. Spooky!
Bloody hell.
Got a lot of child killing story. Mind you, actually, speaking of which. No, that was good. I like that. It was very
Grim.
very spooky.
Yeah, just like mimicking them.
Yeah,
The
but
dead
not
willow.
quite.
Ugh.
Would you like another story?
No. No, actually, no. Yes, of course.
This is The Cabin in the Woods.
Oh, I love a cabin in the woods story.
Me too. Okay. Samantha had two best friends, Jenny and Amber, and that is the most obvious trio of girls.
Jenny.
Samantha, Amber, and Jenny.
Jenny.
Her father was taking her on a weekend vacation and she invited them to come along. Her family owned a cabin in the woods, and on Friday evening her father drove the girls up there. Just might I say, as somebody who now is old enough to have children, the idea of looking after my child and their friends is horrific. Horrific. I don't like children. I'm sure I'd like mine, but I wouldn't give a fuck about the safety of those
and the
others.
responsibility of having to be like, oh, what if one of them's an idiot and they're going to go like walk into a tree and then be like, I'm blind.
Yeah, because me
like,
as a child would have gone walking into those woods.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm blind! See that lake? Asked Samantha when they arrived. That's Lake Samantha. My dad grew up here. He loved it so much he named me after it. That night, after they'd unpacked their things, the three girls sat around and thought of ways to amuse themselves. Does anyone have any spooky stories? Asked Amber. She sounds like a knob.
Yeah, you made
spooky
stories before we go to Maccan's.
I have one, said Jenny. It's true as well. It happened to a friend of a friend of mine. She was babysitting these two little kids one night. She's sitting in the dark by herself watching TV and the phone rings. She goes over and answers it. Hears a voice on the other end breathing really heavily, and it says, "Have you checked on the children?" Jenny, come on, Amber interrupted. Everybody's heard that one. That's the lamest, scary story ever. Does anyone else have one that's actually true? Well, actually, you're only speaking to one other person then.
What?
When you go, does anybody else? You're only speaking to one. There's only three of you there.
That's yeah.
I know one, Samantha said. About 10 minutes hike from here, there's an old broken down house. We passed it on the way up here. It's out in the middle of nowhere, tucked away off a narrow little side road. A long time ago, a man lived there. His family were really wealthy and they owned hundreds of acres of land. The man met a simple country girl from a simple country town. They fell in love. His family wasn't too happy about it. They didn't think the girl was good enough for him, but he ignored them. He was an independent type of guy, and he went off and built a little house on the chunk of their land out in the middle of nowhere.
Cute.
Isn't it?
Yeah,
I'd love that, living off the fat of the land.
I like that for both of them.
He married this girl and everything was wonderful. They had a daughter and eventually they had a son. But this is where the story starts to go bad. Their son was sick. Not physically, but mentally. He wasn't disabled, but he was just a little bit off. By the time he was 9 years old, he became too much for his parents to handle. Throwing temper tantrums, erratic sleep patterns, disappearing into the woods and hiding, that kind of thing. Not knowing what to do about his son, the man turned to his family for help. His parents had the boy taken away. They sent him to a place deep in the woods that catered to people with special needs. His parents thought that was for the best for him. Over time, the family got used to not having him around. They gradually stopped visiting him. They functioned as if they'd never even had a son, and everything went back to being normal again. Sad, isn't it?
That is sad.
8 years later, the boy, who was about 16 or 17, managed to escape from the hospital. The staff did a search, but he was nowhere to be found. His family was notified and they were devastated. They were worried for his safety. He'd been alone in the wilderness for weeks and he was probably dead. But the boy wasn't dead. One night, he found his way back home. He crept into his house, and one by one slaughtered his entire family. His father, his mother, his sister, all of them chopped to pieces. With the blood still dripping from his axe, he disappeared into the woods. When the grisly remains of his family were discovered a few days later, the townsfolk
Cladus.
in the surrounding area were horrified. The police tried to find the boy, but it was no use. To this day, he has What?
Nothing.
Susie, when Susie does the wide eye. When people walk past that fucking thing, it's petrifying.
It gets me every time.
To this day, he's never been found. Since then, every year around harvest time. Why? People have started to go missing, and in their place, a corn husk doll would be left behind. They sound spooky as fuck.
Delicious.
Tamales.
Tamales?
I love a tamale. Yeah, they're cooked in the corn husks.
I haven't got a clue what you've just said.
Tamales. Tamale. It's a Mexican dish.
And what's a corn husk?
You know, when they peeled back it feels a little bit like papaya leaf, and you peel it back, and that's where the corn is. So it's like the outer layer of a corn on the cob.
It's the leaves that enclose the corn.
Exactly that, yes.
And you can eat that.
You don't eat it. It's like meat and vegetables and sauce that's cooked in it, and then you kind of peel it back, and then you eat it.
And you don't eat the husk.
God, I'm so knowledgeable on this. I don't believe you eat the husk. I'm going to have to double check that.
Jesus, very Mexican today, aren't you, Hannah?
Just living my best Mexican life.
Yeah.
Wish everyone would just leave me to it. Legend has it the boy still roams these woods around these parts. The surrounding towns have bought into the legend, and they hang dolls by their front door for protection. The legend says that if the boy sees a doll hanging from the door of a house, he will pass it and leave the residents in peace. I'm assuming that's because he's like, oh, I've been there.
Yeah, that's one of my little
I've
trophies.
already been. Nobody knows if it's true or not, but there's a doll hanging from the door of every house in town. That's so creepy, cried Jenny. Do you have a doll on your door? Of course, said Samantha. My dad says he doesn't believe in the legend, but we hung one just in case. I think I just soiled my underwear, said Amber.
Oh, Amber's a
That's
troll. Classic posh girl, isn't it?
I think I just shit myself.
I've just soiled my pants. Where's my au pair to clean me? Wipe my bum?
I was thinking the other day, you know, if somebody was so posh and somebody just never stopped wiping your arse, you'd never learn to wipe your own arse, would you?
No, but I think that is, a moral tale for the upper classes.
Completely true.
They've never learned to wipe their own assholes.
Not mentally, no.
No.
I've just had 24 fucking emails come through. Fuck off. It's all ads. I think I just soiled my underwear, said Amber. Apparently, the house is still haunted by the ghosts of his murdered family, and if you go up there late at night, you can hear the whole thing take place all over again. Sure, said Do you think we should go up there? Jenny asked. Sure, said Samantha, but tomorrow during the day, there's no sense in tempting fate. That's clever. That night, the girls slept in the same room and huddled together, trying to pretend that they weren't frightened by the story and expecting to hear something tapping at the window at any moment. The next morning, Samantha's father made them all a big breakfast and they went down to the lake for a swim. Around noon, they decided to make the trip up to the old haunted house. When they got there, the girls sensed an eerie presence in the old dilapidated place. It was enough to make their skin crawl. They explored the ruins of the old house, peeking into corners and sifting through rubble. After a while, Samantha spotted something half buried in the dirt. It was some kind of book. She dug it off and dusted it. She took it off. Fuck me. She took it out and She dug it out and dusted it off. The girls gathered around as she opened it and began to flip through the yellowed pages. It's like a diary or something, said Samantha. Maybe it's his diary, Jenny whispered. Whose diary? Asked Amber. The guy that killed his family. Samantha read aloud as the others listened. There's a dedication inscribed inside the cover, she said. It reads, "To my family who I love and cherish and who will always be with me." September the 5th, 1987. It's been hard alone. All they had to do was talk to me. They could not... I heard their... Oh, fuck, this is written terribly. I hear their voices late at night sometimes. I hear their screams. It's cold and dark. I needed love, but they didn't love me. The medicines are gone and I'm free from them all. If they could not love me, they had to go. Dark sleep for everyone. I hear their voices still always screaming.
I reckon it is that bloke, yeah.
December the 4th.
I'd say it probably.
It's one of the nurses. December the 4th. They've stopped looking for me now. It's okay. I live in the forest. I chase down the animals and put them in dark sleep, just like Mum, Dad and Sis. I assume that's murder. I visit my old house at night, listen to the voices. At least they talk to me now. October the 3rd. I left the forest years ago and moved to a small town nearby. Nobody recognises me. Nobody knows who I am. I hear people telling my story sometimes and it makes me laugh. They all fear me. I spend the nights in my old house. Mum and Dad still talk to me. They say they're very proud. November the 2nd. Life's been really good. I found a job. I bought a house. I met a girl. She's very quiet. Sometimes I bring her to the forest. She likes it. I let Mum and Dad see her. They like her. Today's a great day. I have a baby and I'm so happy. Mum and Dad are grandparents now. My wife isn't doing so well. It was hard for her. She might not make it. Maybe she'll go into a dark sleep, so I'll be really happy then. God. August the 13th. I'm so proud of my child. She's just like me, except so much smarter. She has no problems, doesn't hear the voices. She goes to school and has lots of friends, not like me. Sometimes I take her to the woods. I love her so much. I named her after the lake. Samantha.
Fuck.
For a few moments after Samantha stopped reading, there was silence. What the heck? Cried Jenny.
He made them breakfast this morning.
He made them breakfast. Breakfast.
Hash
I hope it was
browns.
something like pancakes and not like sausages.
Like dead
I wouldn't
bits
want
of
sausages off a serial killer. Samantha, is this some sort of joke? Amber asked. It couldn't possibly be. Just then they heard the sound of twigs snapping behind them. When they turned around, they saw Samantha's father standing there. There was a strange, pained look on his face and he was holding an axe in his hands. You weren't supposed to find that, he said. There's no other way now. Dark sleep for everyone.
Why bury your fucking diary in a bit of...
Oh, yeah, that was stupid as fuck.
Put it in a locked box.
What are you doing? Yeah, you're not supposed to find that out in the woods for everyone to see. Fuck. He's got murder on the mind.
Yeah, he wanted it to be found, didn't he?
No, Dad! Samantha screamed, no! When Samantha's father had finished chopping up the bodies, he put the pieces in large black bags and buried them in the woods so deep that no one would ever find them. Now they could be together forever. I'll watch over you now, he mumbled as he patted down the earth with his shovel. You may not understand now, but you will in time. This is the only way for us to be together. Dark sleep forever, and we'll all stay together.
Oh, we need to talk about Kevin kind of vibes, isn't it?
Yeah. A bit late. He has had a child and killed everybody.
He's been a murderer. And I would say if you have a kid that is like worrying mental problems, you've got to make sure they are locked up.
You can't just
lock them away and throw that key away.
Yeah, you've got if your child has shown murderous tendencies, and listen, make no heed. I'm not talking about people who are different from others and need additional help. I'm talking about kids that kill animals.
Yes.
Kids that are like ripping legs off hamsters.
Yep.
And like chomping down on a rabbit's ear. They are the ones you need to be fucking looking at.
Watch out for them.
Get your own cage.
Yeah. Yes. Put them in a cage like a dog outside.
Don't rely on someone else. Don't rely on the staff of an asylum. That's what I'm saying.
It must be absolutely gutting if you'd had a kid and it turns out like that.
This is another reason why I'm not having them.
You can't control that.
You don't know.
You don't know.
And then what? You're always going to be like, I tell you what, if me and you were sat at Brenda yesterday having a bottle of Rioja, we'd be talking about that as well. I'd have to be like, Susie's talking about a fucking
or you'd be like,
psycho son now.
He's eating a bumblebee again. I'd be like,
yeah, I don't know what to do. Sorry, I can't come for more wine. I've got to go and leash my son up.
Yeah, leash him.
Got to take him out into the garden for a piss.
Yeah. Oh, it's too much. And actually, so many cute doggies yesterday. I like a doggie. Doggies are the best. They won't do that.
Sure.
Sure can.
Something in the woods called back to me.
I've got that as well.
Oh, have you?
Yes.
A little overlap.
No, go on.
So you know what happens. All right, here it goes. I've never posted here before, but what happened to me last weekend still has me rattled. Are you surprised by this already? I need to get it off my chest, and maybe, just maybe, someone can help me make sense of it. I live in a small town in Montana, nestled in the Rockies. My house is just a few miles from a vast expanse of national forest land. It's beautiful, sure, but it can be incredibly isolating. That isolation is part of why I love it, but after what happened, it's also why I'm terrified. Last Saturday, I decided to take a late afternoon hike. There's a trail I frequent, one that winds up to a small clearing overlooking the valley. I brought my dog, Max, a German shepherd who's never been spooked by anything in his life. We set off around 3 p.m, figuring we'd make it back before sunset. The hike up was uneventful. The forest was serene, and the only sounds were the rustling of leaves and the occasional chirping of birds. Max was his usual self, darting ahead and then circling back to me. It was perfect, exactly why I moved out here. When we reached the clearing, I sat down on a fallen log to catch my breath and enjoy the view. Max was sniffing around, but after a few minutes, he froze. He was staring at the tree line on the opposite side of the clearing, his ears perked up and his body tense. "What's up, boy?" I asked, trying to see what he was looking at. That's when I noticed it. At first, it was just a shadow moving between the trees. I squinted, thinking maybe it was a deer or something, but then it stepped out into the clearing. It looked like a person, but not quite. It was tall and gaunt, with limbs that seemed too long for its body. Its skin was pale, almost grey, and its eyes were completely black. Yuck. Max... Fuck. Max started growling. A low, menacing sound that I'd never heard from him before. That's good. The figure took a step forward, and that's when I noticed it was mimicking my movements from earlier. Almost like it was replaying a tape of me. Almost like it was replaying a tape of me walking. Then it spoke. "Max, what's up, boy?" The voice was mine. Exactly mine. I felt a chill run down my spine, and Max started barking furiously. The figure stopped, tilted its head, and then turned around, disappearing back into the trees. I didn't stick around to see if it would come back. I grabbed Max by the collar and practically ran down the trail. It was getting dark, and every sound was making me jump. Max kept looking back, growling intermittently. We made it home just as the last light was fading. I locked all the doors and windows, something I rarely do out here. I was just trying to calm myself down, rationalising that maybe it was just some sort of trick of the light, or maybe another hiker messing with me. But deep down, I knew that it wasn't. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house made me jump, and Max was restless, pacing around the living room. Around 2 a.m, just as I was to start dozing off, I heard it. "Max, what's up, boy?" It was faint, almost like a whisper, but it was definitely my voice. It was coming from outside near the tree line. I didn't sleep at all after that. When the sun finally came up, I took Max and drove into town. I needed to be around people, somewhere that didn't feel so exposed. I told my friend Jake about it, and he just laughed, saying I'd been out of the woods too long. Maybe he's right. Maybe it was just my mind playing tricks on me, but I can't shake the feeling that something out there saw me, remembered me, and called back my own voice. I haven't been back to that trail since. Every time I think about going for a hike, I hear that voice again. And I can't bring myself to leave the house. I don't know what I saw, but I'm sure of one thing. It saw me, too. The end. Spooky!
Yeah, that is. "Max, what's up, boy?"
Yeah, Max, what's up, boy?
Imagine hearing your own... I'd love to hear my own voice.
Me
to be
too,
fair.
actually. I love the
I'd
sound
be
of
like,
my
"Oh
own
my God,
voice.
it's me."
Yeah, like, God, you
Oh my
sound
God, why are you so obsessed with me?
It was like when I went on TV, and before I went on TV, I was like, God, it's going to be really weird to watch myself. It's going to be cringe as fuck. And then I saw myself, and I was
love
like,
it.
oh my God, I'm stunning.
Yeah, yeah, you're like, I need to watch that at least once a week.
God. Have you got another story, please?
Yeah, I do.
Because I want a story.
Mm-hmm.
Girl.
A dead boy got inside our house.
Uh-oh.
I was doing the dishes when my son told me that he'd made a new friend. He tugged on my pant leg and asked me if his new friend could come inside. We'd just moved into a quiet suburban neighborhood in Minnesota, and I remember being happy that Atticus was already meeting people. So I went to the front door. What?
His name's Atticus.
Yeah, like Atticus
off.
Finch, innit? And I remember being happy that Atticus was already meeting people, so I went to the front door expecting to meet a neighbourhood boy. There was nothing, just an empty screen door opening up to a cold spring morning. I looked quizzically down at my son, who was still beaming with pride and excitement at the prospect of an afternoon playing with his new buddy. His name's Jeb. Can he come in?
Jeb!
Buddy, there's nobody there, I said to him. Attie's face immediately pulled down in an undignified frown. He's right there, Atticus pointed. My grin only irritated him further. He is, though. Atticus insisted. I humoured him. Nothing. Just balmy sunlight streaming into our house and various bugs pelting themselves against the screen trying to get in. I assumed that Atticus had made a friend, as in literally made himself an imaginary friend. I tried not to show any disappointment because I've heard that it's completely normal behaviour for a 7-year-old to do things like this. I made a mental note to be a better dad and take him to the playground more often. All right, buddy, well, I can't see him. You say his name is Jeb? Yeah. He's hurt. Can he come inside to play? The last comment made my skin itch and I felt troubled. Hurt? A gloom settled around my corridor and the sunny front yard felt threatening despite blossoming dogwood trees and a sky filled with puffy clouds. I chastised myself for being afraid of my son's imagination, but Atticus declaring that his invisible friend was hurt made me start a little bit. I eased down into my chair so that we could talk eye to eye. Why do you say he's hurt? Atticus was frustrated that I couldn't understand such an obvious concept. Because his head is all wrong. And he's red.
What?
He huffed.
Oh my God, like he's a prolapse.
Don't know. He pointed at the screen door. I felt like I'd swallowed a rock. Can Jeb come in, please? No, buddy, tell Jeb to go home, maybe some other time. Atticus was distraught by this and let me know in no uncertain terms that he was displeased and that I was a terrible father. After his time out, we were able to recoup the day with Lego. When my wife came home, I told her almost all about Atticus's new friend, Jeb. Obviously, I left out that one singular detail. I wrote it off as Attie's overactive imagination and made a note to read more age-appropriate books to him in the future. Maybe something in Watership Down had conjured Jeb. I knew that this would be a non-starter as both Atticus and I really liked Watership Down. Spooky, Christine said non-committally. What, that's it? Spooky? Christine shrugged. I mean, I don't know what else to say. It's spooky and he's always been a little strange that way. Do you remember when he was a baby and he was always smiling at that same corner of the old house? I did remember. Christine never admitted it, but I had always thought that Attie's little preoccupation with that singular corner of the guest bedroom might have had something to do with our expedited move. I'm not normally one prone to fearing ghosts and... I'm not one normally prone to fearing ghosts, but I could remember many dark, early mornings in the old house where I'd truly feel unsettled. I remember trying to feed Atticus and he wouldn't want the bottle because he would be staring, wide-eyed, at the corner of the room and smiling. As much as I'd tried to attribute that to some weird little quirk in my son, it's not a pleasant thing to experience in the loneliest hours of the night. What's worse is that when Atticus started talking, he started to fear that corner. I remember him wailing, "No!" pitifully and burying his face in my arms, trying to hide from whatever he saw there. I never told Christine this, but one time I asked him what was wrong, and a much younger Attie told me that he didn't think the man's smile was a nice smile. Does that make sense?
Kind of, yeah.
He told me that he didn't think the man's smile was a nice smile.
Yeah.
I also never told Christine about the time that Attie saw a picture of a skull in an old history book, and Attie pointed and plopped his little finger on the picture and beamed, just like the man in the corner. Yeah, vaguely, I lied, but that's just Attie's imagination. Smart kids are like that. Well, anyway, all I'm saying is that Atticus can be spooky sometimes. It's probably just one more creepy phase of his because you, she pointed playfully, won't stop reading him scary stories. M.R. James helps him sleep. M.R. James helps everyone sleep. It's not like I'm making him read Jack Ketchum. She gave me a look suggesting that I was being pedantic. I knew she was right and resolved to concede that later and also to read him some Narnia for a little while. So, should we just ignore Jeb for now? I asked Christine. She nodded. Yeah, but make sure that you don't ever say that he can come inside. What, just in case? I finished? Yeah, just in case. She nodded. Atticus would wake us up. Atticus woke us up that night and asked once again if Jeb could come inside to play. Can he please? He's crying and he says he's lost. Under no circumstances, buddy. Go back to sleep. I grunted into my pillow. Atticus plodded to my side of the bed and poked me lightly. I can't sleep. He won't stop crying and he's really loud. I cocked an eyebrow in reply and he knew to drop it. I rolled out of bed and plucked him in my arms. Come on, bud, we'll draw the curtains and put on a noisemaker or something. I slung him over my shoulder like a sack of potatoes, a way he's loved being carried since he was a baby, and I took him into the hallway. Normally, Atticus would chuckle softly while I carried him, but tonight I could feel him shaking. By the time I had him back into his bedroom, he was nearly inconsolable. Atty loves his room. It's filled with pictures of astronauts and rocket ships, and he has those cheap glow-in-the-dark stars and planets on every surface.
I loved them.
I loved those.
But I want them back, actually.
I want it back. Me too. I want the Milky Way.
I'm gonna go full. I'm gonna have lava lamps. I love lava lamps. I'm gonna have them. I'm a fucking adult now. Why not?
Yeah, why the fuck not? Let's go back in time.
Let's go back.
Let's go back. Yeah.
Woo!
And one more time. Love that banger. He even made me arrange them into familiar constellations, which he could tell you the names of, but I can't.
That's good.
To me, it's the bedroom I would have wanted for myself as a kid, but as I tucked him into bed, he couldn't stop staring wide-eyed at the narrow band of window which was visible from behind his solar system curtains. The room was cold, too, and by that, I mean it felt like being outside on a winter night. I tried to ignore it. "You're okay, buddy," I said consolingly, and I moved to shut his curtains. I stopped briefly. The edges of his window were lined in a jagged layer of frost. It was a warm May night outside. There was positively no reason why there should be a frost. I grimaced and watched the layer of frost creep across the window pane like an infection. I felt that same gloomy dread that I had felt earlier in the afternoon, and I turned to look at my son. His eyes were wide and wet in the dim light from his nightlight. "Atticus," I said haltingly, "are you afraid of Jeb?" Atty nodded silent agreement. I hastily shut the window curtain and knelt by his bedside. He calmed down a little, enough for me to ask him, "Why, buddy? I thought Jeb was your friend." Atty tried to burrow into his blankets. "I think Jeb is getting mad at me," he whimpered. I pressed my mouth into a flat line and looked at the window again. There was nothing for a few moments. Then from behind the closed curtain came a long, slow whistle.
Oh, no thank you. No thanks, girl.
It was a pathetic, mournful sound and unsteady, as if the whistler were only just learning. It came breathy and sharp from just outside. It was the sad keening of something lost in suffering. I turned back to Atticus. "Is that Jeb?" My son nodded, and fresh tears welled up in his eyes. His words from earlier came back to me. "His head is all wrong, and he's red. All right, stay with us tonight, but let's not make a habit of it." The next day, I discovered that Jeb was real. As I was rolling my trash down the driveway, my neighbour Dan came huffing to meet me in the street. He was a typical suburban husband, so was I, so no judgment, and I saw no reason why the two of us shouldn't have been friends, except that he was very nosy and kind of grim. He stayed up most nights reading the police blotter and generally trying to absorb as much terrible information about our little city as he could. Then he would find neighbours and bemoan the state of the town. "Jack, did you hear the news?" I let my garbage can thud into place and waited politely to hear about the latest awful thing. "The Kroger was robbed." "Right," I said flatly. "Town's kind of going to shit," he murmured. "Gets worse every year." He shook his head. "It never used to be like this." "No, I suppose not," I said. "Did anyone die?" He usually only bothered to tell me about these things if someone was killed. Dan shook his head. "Not on that one, but did you hear about the kid?" That piqued my interest a bit. I asked, even though I didn't want to. "Kid?" Dan shook his head in disbelief. "Yeah. Kid was riding his bike and got crushed by a drunk driver.
Oh, no.
It happened at 2 PM. Who's drunk at 2 PM? Oh, and then I asked the question that I didn't want to know the answer to. "Do you know his name?" Dan blinked, surprised that I'd asked. "Yeah, it was John. I'm pretty sure it was..."
I was just going to say John
something.
Edward something.
"Do you mean Jeb?" His eyes rounded. "Yeah."
Oh. I thought that was going to go such a different way.
And what do you mean?
Because I thought it was going to be John Edward
Jeb.
Bates. So John Edward Jeb. No, because I thought Jeb's a mad name.
Jeb.
So I thought it was going to be like, have you ever heard that before?
Well, I don't live in America.
No, I was America.
Oh, yeah, 100% America.
Jeb. Even worse.
Jeb. JEBBIFER.
Jebby.
Jebby.
Jebby and Samantha.
JEBBIFER. John? I'm pretty sure it was John something. Jeb? His eyes rounded. Yeah. Oh, you already knew. It's messed up, right? Killed by a drunk driver at 2 PM, like 3 blocks from our house. 2 PM. Are you okay? You look sick. I'm fine. I'm gonna have to go back inside. I turned unsteadily and walked back inside with leaden feet. Thanks for the news, though. A cursory internet search revealed that indeed, a young boy had been crushed by a drunk driver yesterday afternoon.
Oh no.
I tried to remember exactly when Atticus had first spoken to me about Jeb, but it was hazy. When I opened up the link to read the entire article, I almost retched. The article displayed the mutilated face of a young boy. The entire right side of his face looked like it had been crushed in by a terrible force, so that all the structure had completely gone out of it, so that it looked like a wet bag of raw meat and hair.
Ah.
His bloodied right eye peered dolefully out from where I thought his cheek should have been, and his mouth was torn into a lipless grimace where the road had burned off the lower half of his face. Jeb's left eye, however, stared out at the viewer with twinkling menace and intelligence. In that moment, I was certain that Jeb was looking at me from my computer monitor. I jerked back from my monitor. I was offended for Jeb, who, in their tasteless desire for page views, had decided it was appropriate to put that image on their website. I slammed my laptop closed and left the room. I even considered calling the local paper to voice my disgust to their editor. I resolved to do this, and when I returned to the webpage a few hours later, the image displayed was a school picture of a smiling young boy with dark brown hair and a gap-toothed grin. In the moment, I had reasoned that they must have changed it out of respect. Things didn't get better. Atticus became more and more withdrawn and no longer asked me if Jeb could come inside to play. He avoided the subject pointedly, and when I asked the next day if Jeb still wanted to come inside, Atty just flattened his mouth and refused to answer. That night, the whistling was outside his window again.
Oh, I don't like that.
That's blowing out a candle.
Oh.
Oh,
No.
never again. Never again.
Turns out I can't whistle.
Christine, too, started acting strangely. I started to find thick lines of salt on all our windowsills and doorways. When I asked Christine about them, she acted casually. Oh, it's just in case, she affirmed. You don't cover the house in salt on a whim. What's going on? She didn't respond immediately, but I pressed her. What's going on? Did you know that a little boy got killed right near our house? She asked me flatly. My heart sank into my stomach and I looked away guiltily. Yeah, I didn't want to scare you. Okay, well now we've moved from Atticus has a creepy imaginary friend to a boy matching the name of Atty's imaginary friend was killed outside our house on the same day that Atty started seeing him. She took a breath. Something's going on. Atty's room is always freezing and I'm hearing whistling. Outside the house, why are you smiling? I forced a frown. Sorry, it's just nice not to feel like I'm going crazy. She waved her hand. You know, you don't need to try and handle all this stuff on your own. Something's happening to our son. We tried all the tricks. She burnt sage in the house and started calling priests to try and bless us despite everything. Couldn't help but feel silly doing things like that. Why would salt and sage and priests work? And yet they seemed to. Atticus didn't mention anything about Jeb for a long time. And in a week or two, he started to come out of his shell again. The peace lasted for almost 2 weeks, but ended when I heard a metallic crash from the back side of our house, and our motion detector was triggered, engaging the floodlights. I was still mostly asleep when I blindly tore through our kitchen to burst through the back door, but I had a sick feeling with what the sound had been. Despite the stillness of the backyard, I knew that something was wrong. The crickets and insects were utterly silent, and our floodlight illuminated the sycamores in a jarring white light. The energy was tense and expectant, even though nothing was there. I didn't bother to scan the yard, but ran instead to the side of the house to confirm my suspicion about the source of the noise. Our cellar door was open, and the inside latch was torn apart and hanging uselessly. I had an unobstructed view of our basement steps leading into the utter darkness beneath our house. A few things happened in quick succession. First, a sharp whistle wafted from the dark basement at the foot of the cellar steps. Before, the sound had been piteous and soft, as if the whistler had been shy and plaintive. Now it was piercing and shrill with a terrible potency behind it. Second, the wooden steps leading from the basement to our kitchen shuddered violently as something sprinted furiously towards the kitchen door. Third, Atticus started wailing in terror. It took me no more than 3 seconds to get to Atty's room, where I found he and Christine huddled together on the bed with him screaming in terror. He was so distraught that he couldn't stop hiccuping. Between fits, he'd murmur, "He's so mad. What did you do?" We all looked at each other hopelessly as the temperature in Atticus's bedroom plummeted. caught together in this nightmare. All of us spent the night in the master bedroom with lines of salt laid down in front of every entrance and a Virgin Mary prayer candle sputtering on the shelf. I didn't sleep a wink. I couldn't, not with the sound of tiny footsteps pattering up and down our hall. Tiny footsteps pattering up and down our hallway all night long. Things haven't got any better. I asked Atticus if Jeb had told him what he wanted. The answer that Atticus gave leaves me with no doubt that he's in terrible danger. Jeb wants to play with me forever.
Gross. No, thank you, Jeb.
That's the end.
That very good. Very spooky.
Oh, Jeb. Jeb needs to be laid to rest. Yeah, go on.
A 15-year-old girl named Donna lived with her father in a small house in the suburbs. Ever since her mother died, Donna had depended on her father for everything. They had a wonderful relationship and loved each other very, very much. Lots of single dads
Yeah, I like it.
today, and kids. One morning, Donna's father was leaving on a business trip. As they ate breakfast together, he told her that he'd be home very late that night. With that, he kissed her on the forehead, grabbed his briefcase and walked out of the front door. Later that day, when Donna came home from school, she did some homework and watched some TV. By midnight, her father had still not returned, so she decided to go to bed. That night, she had a dream. She found herself standing at the edge of a busy highway. Cars and trucks whizzed by at an alarming rate. She looked across the highway and saw a familiar figure standing on the other side. It was her father. His hands were cupped around his mouth, and he seemed to be shouting something to her, but she couldn't make out what he was saying. As the traffic whizzed by, she strained to hear. Her father's eyes were sad. He seemed to be desperately trying to communicate something. "Don't open the door." Suddenly, Donna was awoken from the dream by a strange tapping noise. Then somebody began to ring the doorbell downstairs. Ring, ring, ring! She scrambled out of bed and put on her slippers. The word scrambled as a description really makes me laugh. She scrambled out of bed and put on her slippers. Then, dressed only in her nightgown, she ran downstairs and went to the front door. Looking through the peephole, she saw her father's face outside. He was staring right at her. The doorbell kept ringing insistently. "Okay, hold on, I'm coming," she shouted. She pulled back the deadbolt and was about to unlatch the door when she stopped. She looked through the peephole at her father again. Something about his expression didn't look quite right. His eyes were wide open and he looked terrified. She slid the deadbolt back into place. "Dad?" She yelled through the door. "Did you forget your keys?" Ring, ring, ring. "Dad, answer me." Ring, ring, ring. "Dad, please, I need you to answer me." Ring, ring, ring. "Is there someone else out there with you?" Ring, ring, ring. "Why won't you answer me?" Ring, ring, ring. "I'm not opening the door until you say something." The doorbell kept ringing and ringing. Hang on, I'm going to do that again. "I'm not opening the door until you say something." The doorbell kept ringing and ringing, but for some reason, her father refused to answer her desperate cries. For the rest of the night, the frightened girl cowered in the corner of the hallway, helplessly listening to the ceaseless ringing of the doorbell. It seemed to go on for hours, but eventually she fell into an uneasy sleep. At dawn, she woke up and realised that everything was quiet. She crept over to the door and looked through the peephole again. Her father was still standing there, staring at her. She cautiously opened the door and was confronted with a sight that filled her with unimaginable horror. Her father's severed head was hanging from a nail above the door. There was a note attached to the doorbell, and crude, scrawled handwriting. It read, "Clever girl."
Oh, not another clever girl.
Clever girl!
What does that mean?
It means he was never there. Somebody's killed him, and his ghost has come to her in the...
All the murderers just like
dream.
crouching down and going...
Well, they were, but his ghost came to her in a dream and said, "Don't open the door. Do not open the door." So they put his head there, so his head's always been there, just like... Even when she first got there, it's just been hanging there all night. And then the murderer was like, "Okay, fine. Smashed it."
Fucking hell, man.
Gross. Okay,
Another story.
Yes.
Are you ready for a creep of the week?
Yeah. Oh, yes,
creep
please.
Creep of the week. Creep of the week. Creep of the week. Creep of the week.
Let's go.
Okay. This is entitled "Pick Me, Choose Me."
Oh, God.
Please, I'll cry happy tears. This is from Tegan.
Oh, I see. Sorry. I thought you meant the story was entitled.
No.
And I was like, what's that about? But now I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Tegan or Tegan?
Tegan, I believe.
Tegan.
But
like
Tegan do
Tegan.
tell us if we're correct.
Tegan.
What was the other option? Tegan.
Yeah, that's weird.
No,
Isn't it?
Tegan.
No, it's Tegan.
It's Tegan.
All right. Hey, Ghost Huns. And then this emoji. Say my name, Destiny's Child. You can say my name. It's what I'm trying to say. I think she's got the same chaos energy as us,
I love
actually.
it. Yeah, great, Tegan.
Before I start, I have to tell you, I'm not normally one for podcasts, but you guys are someone else.
Oh, I love that. I love that we're something else.
I look like I'm having a stroke at work because I want to cackle, but I can't. I work in an office and it's usually dead silent, so I always look a bit odd trying to hold in my laughter. I listen to your pod every chance I get, even when I'm in the bath. Laugh so hard while shaving, I cut my cooch.
That's amazing. I've heard a lot of people say they listen to our pod in the bath.
That's so funny. Well, it's a danger. You've got to
go waxing, love.
Yeah, wax it off. Anyway, I've always had a bit of a strange experience with ghosts and shit like that, but there are a few things I remember most. When I was about 7 or 8, me, my mum and my younger brother moved into a house. Right from the start, it just felt off. Mum never let us into the front room without her because she felt that there was something evil in there. Me and my brother say that the ghost in the house wanted to replace my mum, as there was never any harm done to us, but always to my mum. She often got pushed down the stairs, would get really ill quite often, and she always had some sort of cut or bruise on her.
Sicky mum.
Sicky mum. Yeah. One night, after we'd all gone to bed, my brother snuck into my room so we could stay up later, which was a usual thing for us. I was tired though, so I didn't turn over to look at him and he never said anything. I just knew he was in there because he did his usual knock and opened the door and plodded into my room. After about 5 minutes, I wondered why he hadn't said anything.
No, I don't like this.
So I turned around to look at him, only to see a little girl standing in the corner of my room. I screamed so loud I woke my brother and my mum up. After that, I slept in my mum's room for the next few weeks. We weren't in that house for very long, and we moved into the house we live in now. Nothing seemed wrong with it, and it was all good for a while. But in 2017, my cousin passed away. He was only a baby, so it was very sad. But we put his blanket folded on the stand next to our TV. That night, our TV turned on by itself and stayed on the blue standby screen for 5 minutes before turning off again. It's done this most nights since. In December of 2023, my auntie, who was my baby cousin's mum, also sadly passed away. This was an absolutely heartbreaking experience as she was one of the biggest parts of our lives. She had red hair and her favourite colour was red. Her nickname was literally Red Deb because she loved the colour so much. Since she passed away, things have been moved around the house. We have a giant picture collage of me, my mum and my brother from when we were younger and older. A giant collage of when we were younger and older and loads of different eras of life. That had been behind the sofa for months. One morning, I came downstairs to make breakfast and the picture was in front of the dining room door. It was only me and my boyfriend home and he didn't even know about it. I shat myself and called him down to ask if he'd moved it, but he was adamant he hadn't and was just as scared as I was. Last night I got upset about my auntie and decided to write her a message. While I was writing it and crying, my own TV light started to flash. It's red and I'd lost the remote ages ago, so I haven't been able to turn it on for ages. It flashed for a few seconds and as I pulled my phone out to film it, it stopped. That was definitely her way of telling me she's okay.
Wow.
I also got very ill one time and started hallucinating and I saw Michael Jackson crawl up my stairs.
That is so much
and
more
run into my
terrifying.
room and now I have a crippling fear of MJ.
Well, who hasn't?
I mean, that is...
not you. You love Earth Song.
I do love Earth Song.
What
about animals? What about them?
What about animals? Is that what he says?
Yeah. What about
Fuck's
elephants?
sake.
Is
that
what
a
about
lyric?
children dying? What about them?
Oh, I don't think I like it anymore.
Oh, I love it.
Those lyrics are really bad.
Literally.
I like that. I like that bit.
Ooh.
Yeah, I don't like the lyrics. What about elephants isn't hardly going to make it into the fucking...
What about elephants? What about them? Anyway.
Poet laureate of the year.
Honestly. What about the elephants?
What about them?
Thank you. Anyway, hilarious. Although the idea of Michael Jackson crawling up the stairs and running into... Oh, no. Anyway, sorry this is so long. I can never tell a short story. Thank you for always making me laugh. I love your poddy. P.S. Please ignore the stupid emojis in my name. I've tried to change them so many times it's unreal. I was going through a baby gay phase in 2020 and I thought I was the shit. I was, in fact, not the shit. I know Hannah won't judge me, though, because she's an inclusive queen.
I am.
Love you guys. Tegan. Sorry. Tegan?
I am.
Excuse me?
No, I'm the one that carries the inclusivity here.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Honestly, you've got no idea how hard the edit is. Susie just
that is
slurs everywhere.
No, that's outrageous.
As far as the eye can see.
How dare you? I'm being painted as some, like,
Villain.
awful Tory
Tory.
scumbag.
I'm an inclusive queen.
Oh.
Thank you, Tegan, for
Thanks,
your
babe.
story. Would you like a quick We Get Haunted?
Yes.
Okay. Well, today, am I keeping you up, am I? Having a big fucking yawn.
Crack on.
Are you ready to do We Get Haunted so you don't have to? You checking your emails? Okay, this is the thumb game. Okay, here's what we're going to do. There is a Japanese urban legend about a young woman who has sadly died, and we need to be...
What? Nothing to see there.
I think Susie's had enough for one day.
No, go on. There's a Japanese
there's a woman who's died. If you will pay some respect, thank you.
Respectful.
There's a woman who's died, and apparently she died and she lost her thumb, right? Apparently, if you find her missing thumb, you get a wish.
Right.
But the only way that we find this out is what we do is we hold our thumb up, right?
Yeah.
And then we have to chant something, and if your thumb turns that way, of its own accord, you get a wish.
Okay.
But you can't cheat because there's no point.
Wouldn't.
You would.
Wouldn't.
Okay. So we have to. Okay. You're going to repeat after me?
Yeah.
Could you please look a little bit interested?
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, I need to pronounce this properly. Oyayubi. Oyayubi.
Oyayubi.
Practice.
Oyayubi.
Yeah. Right. So close your eyes. Oyayubi. Oyayubi. Hear our voices.
Hear our voices.
Oyayubi.
Oyayubi.
Oh yeah, because I know that you're not doing it in one line. You're doing it after every word, so I now need to adjust.
Okay. Oyayubi.
Oyayubi. No, I'm repeating after you.
Oyayubi.
No, stop saying it.
Hannah's a dickhead. You didn't repeat after me.
Shut up. Oyayubi.
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 Grant our wish.
Grant our wish.
Right, now wait for your thumb. Is your thumb gonna turn on its own? You're a twat. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us. It didn't work, and Susie's being a rotter.
Really, really went down.
We'll
I get
see
a wish
you.
now?
No, because you cheated.
do.
No. I saw you go,
I wish for some Cadbury's fingers.
oh my God. Can I just, before we end this episode, please put a recommendation out to everybody to please go and get a Lindt wafer. They're in all your petrol stations, right at the till. Please do get yourself a Lindt wafer because it's one of the tastiest things I've ever eaten. Or the Rice Krispie Treats from M&S. You can tell I'm going to a service station later.
Yeah, I can't wait for those.
Okay, then.
We'll see you next week. Go to patreon.com/ghost huns
Patreon.com for more ghost
content.
huns.
Ciao,
Bye.
ciao,
Bye.
Tootie. Ciao.